Hawkins, and welcome to this new episode of the Explicitly Pro-Life podcast. I have a very special guest here live in person today, Kelsey Hazzard, founder and president of Secular Pro-Life. I brought her on for a second episode because I felt like this was such an important topic. I didn't want to just gloss over it and just be done with it. I think this is something that we all have a lot of questions about. I get obviously a lot of questions about this, but you are a foster mom.
I am.
And so you can go back, watch the first episode we did with Kelsey and Secular Pro-Life if you want to learn about Secular Pro-Life. But this episode, we're going to talk about the foster care system because I get this question every single time on campus. Well, what about kids in foster care? Somehow all the kids in foster care are justification for all the millions of abortions. It's completely sickening. But I get this. It's every time. And it's somehow this justification for why we should keep the violence of abortion legal. So I want to talk about the actual system as a foster mom, what you've experienced. You're also a lawyer to give us some insight on like policies, because we've been talking a lot about what are the policies we need to be putting in place in a post-Roe America. You know, are there foster care and adoption reforms we need to put in place? But I also want to talk about your personal experience, because I think if you would poll like the Students for Life general body, vast majority of the young people we work with would say, I want to be a foster parent or I want to be an adoptive parent. Like they feel especially called to. Surprise, surprise, we love babies and care about humans, right? Small, little, tiny humans. But then there's like this gap of like, oh, there's nothing really I can do. I'm 20 years old. You know, how can I become a foster parent? That's like when I'm way old, after my kids have graduated college. But you like started making I've been following your journey a little bit on Facebook, but you started making you positioned yourself very early on saying, I want to be a foster parent. Can you talk personally about that in a way that might help some person who might be 18 or 20 years old watching and thinking, I think I want to do this?
Wow, there is so much to talk about in this episode. I heard like 4 or 5 different questions there.
What we want to talk about, just so I won't forget.
Okay, fair enough. So I have been a foster mom for about a year, and I started planning much sooner than that. One of the first things that I did was when I was making decisions about where to live, when I bought a house, I was thinking with future children in mind. That was one thing. I also started looking into local agencies, and I found one, the secular one, of course, and went to their open house and, got my toe in the water, started asking questions, finding out more about what it would look like. And during that time, I was saving money. I had roommates at the time, so I wouldn't have qualified to be a foster parent. But I was making a plan for, I think these roommates are going to be here for X long, and then what will happen then? So when my latest roommate notified me that he was going to leave, I said, I'm going to be a mom. And that was when I pulled the trigger. I was able to email the agency people who already knew who I was because I'd been at their open house and said, okay, I'm ready to pull the trigger. And from when I sent that email to when I got my first placement was 3 or 4 months.
Wow, that's very fast.
Yeah, because there's a significant need for foster homes, and they run so you're taking classes about child development and trauma and things that you can do, discipline tactics and things of that nature. You're taking those classes, and simultaneously they're running your background check. They're doing your home study so that when it's done and ready, it's done and ready. Wow. Because the need is significant. And getting to your point about what policies do we need, what reforms?
Because I hear this all the time. The foster care system's broken. And, we really need to focus on that, as if it's so frustrating. Because I'm like, yes, I agree. Like, if it's broken, we need to fix it and we need to care for these children. But, them being 400-some thousand children in foster care doesn't justify abortion.
No, absolutely not. So let's
unpack it a little bit.
Yeah. All right. So we need to talk first and foremost about how children come into foster care, because I think there are some basic misunderstandings about the root. Let's talk about the root. Okay. If someone is pregnant and doesn't feel equipped to parent and decides to place that child for adoption, that child is extremely unlikely to ever end up in foster care, because you're pregnant, you've got a few months to make a plan, and you can go meet with an agency, look at different couples' profiles, different family profiles, say, I want my child to go into this home, have all of that set up privately without ever involving DCF, right? So those infant adoptions are not happening through foster care. Children come into foster care at an older age because they have been abused or neglected. Or there are at least allegations of abuse and neglect that are being investigated, right? That is why children come into foster care. Very rare to have infants placed in foster care. If they are, 9 times out of 10, it's because they tested positive at birth for drug exposure in utero. That would be why a baby comes into foster care. And the adoptive family
says, we don't want to adopt that child.
Or that biological mom hadn't made a plan. Maybe was due to drug addiction, not taking care of her life.
And I think that's important to think about too, because sometimes we hear, well, there's these I'm thinking about the pro-abortion responses. Well, they're being abused and neglected because they weren't wanted.
No. That's absolutely not true.
Okay. Can I just take you in my pocket to every college campus?
I can tell you, and I am somewhat limited in what I can say about the children in my home, because there are privacy rules and that sort of thing. But I can tell you that the children in my home are wanted by their biological families. They are. There are issues of drug abuse. There are issues of incarceration. There are things going on in their lives that just don't allow them to be with their children.
So if you really want to impact the number of children in foster care, we've got to get a handle on the opioid crisis then,
That's
right?
absolutely correct. Yes, so much of this is driven by drugs. No question about it. I think so that there is definitely a disconnect when people say, trying to use foster kids as justification. Like the connection really isn't there. I see a connection in terms of pro-life people wanting to be involved in foster care because everyone should want to be involved in foster care, and we like children and we care about those who are vulnerable. That's the connection, is vulnerable children. But beyond that, there isn't really a one-to-one connection of someone saved from abortion, someone enters foster care. That's just not how it works. So when somebody says, abortion because foster care, A, that's not what's happening, and B, don't talk about people in foster care that way. That's rude.
It's dehumanizing.
It's extremely dehumanizing. I have the privilege of having some wonderful children in my home, and I wish that you could meet them because you would stop saying that crap. And I'm trying to keep my language clean for this podcast.
It's explicitly pro-life. You're allowed to curse a little.
Oh, okay.
Because the staff didn't trust that I couldn't go this long without cursing. So explicitly pro-life was a way that it's okay. I'd slip up every once in a while. So you're allowed.
Okay.
That's why it's explicitly pro-life.
Okay.
That's really, it's very interesting to hear, because I think this is something we don't talk about a lot, but we don't hear about. So let's go back to, so you said something really interesting where when you were buying your house, you're a single woman, right?
Yes.
You were like, I need a 4 or 5 bedroom, little house because I want to house tiny humans inside of it. That is something I think that, I'm trying to think of, what's the, steps. If you're 21, 22 years old and you think this is what you've been called to do, as either as a person in a marriage or who's single, what are some of the steps you took or that you wish you would have taken to kind of get you on your way?
Yeah, definitely talking to people who have been down this road before, talking to foster parents, talking to adoptive parents, getting that firsthand knowledge would be task number one. Going to agency open houses, looking, if you happen to have a choice of agencies in your area, investigating the various agencies, and housing. Yeah, making your housing plans with children in mind. All of those are things that you can be doing even before you're ready to get the license.
What's the goal with foster care?
The original goal always is reunification.
What's the rate that actually happens?
It varies a lot. So, as I said, I've been a foster parent for about a year now, and I have not seen any reunifications. I also haven't seen any adoptions. So the children who've come through my home have they don't have their cases resolved yet. So I can't like speak from personal experience about what the rate is. But that's something that you can ask agencies about and look up from state to state. As far as like reforms go, there have been some, including in Florida.
Actually, what you said, that was very fast. So like 3 to 4 months. Like other states, I know Virginia. I mean, it's a very long time, and the home study is the delay. It seems like in a lot of cases,
and that can be due to understaffing. Case managers are definitely understaffed, underpaid, no doubt about it. And we do need more foster parents, especially foster homes that are the single person or the married couple, but in a home setting versus group home. Yeah. The tendency is
the horror stories you hear are
right. So the tendency, at least in Florida, has been trying to move away from group home settings, trying to discourage shelter placements and encourage placement in foster homes, which is all well and good. But if it's an unfunded mandate and you don't have those foster homes, then what? So what we really need is what we really. Yeah, so and this is, again, a question for your particular agency. Essentially, what my experience has been is that there is a monthly stipend. It more or less covers food. But if you're doing foster parenting the right way, you will spend more than the stipend on your kids. That's how it should be. So people who say that you're in it for the money just make me laugh. I mean, it's not that much money.
Yeah, I was wondering about that, about the cost, because you kind of meet people and you're like, do you do it because you love children, or is it a money making thing? I don't know.
No, it shouldn't. No, I can't see a way to make it profitable. That's no way. That would be totally the wrong mindset.
Completely
obviously.
Unethical.
Yeah,
morally
absolutely
wrong.
not. Yeah, no. Like when I was going through my training, they didn't even talk about stipends until the very end, because they were trying to make sure that we were in it for the right reasons.
You were financially secure. That you could
yes.
Take care of
They will
children.
look at your finances. They will look at your job, they will look at your home, they will I mean, you're putting yourself under a microscope when you become a foster parent, but it's 100% worth it. And they do offer certain benefits for the kids. So they have state health insurance, for example, for those who are older and have been in foster care for an extended period of time. There are some college benefits, tuition waivers, things like that. So there are ways of making it not a financial burden. But that doesn't mean that people are in it for the money. No.
So I guess the question, I'm going to get to practical questions. Like, so if a child gets placed in your home, can that child foreseeably, if they're not being reunified with a parent or a family member, can they live with you until they're 18?
They can, yes. So they
or it's not like a rotation where they rotate.
No. The goal is stability. The goal is stability. So
that's what children.
That's what children need. So if someone is going to leave my home, there had better be a good reason for it. I'll give an example. For a while, I had a fourth child in my home, a 16-year-old. He came to my house for Christmas break, had a wonderful time. Wonderful kid, and the only reason that he left my home at the end of Christmas break was because our goals for him were to get him in a home that either was with one of his siblings or at least let him stay at his current high school, because my home was way too far away from his high school. He would have been traveling, an hour and a half just to get to school. So that was the reason that placement ended, and it wasn't it just was what it was. Like, okay, well, this is a fine short-term home, but this, in the long run, this isn't meeting his needs. So thankfully, I had a good relationship with the people who were involved in that case, and did get the follow-up that he had been reunited with one of his brothers. So it was the right move for him to leave my home. As much as it hurts to say goodbye, it was the right thing in that case. So there, you're
a lot of Christmas gifts you had to buy. You had 4 kids. You had to buy Christmas gifts. It's an expensive thing. Did they give you a bonus for Christmas gifts?
No, no.
The state doesn't give you anything like, here's some additional money to help you buy.
No, but there is a group here locally called Friends of Foster Children that offers. They offered some Christmas gifts, and my parents were eager to spoil them.
Sure.
So that all worked out.
Okay.
Yeah.
I wonder about that. That's expensive. You went from 0 children to 4 very quickly. So
yeah, I did. I had
to work up to that.
Yeah. No, it's funny when that boy joined our home, I had gotten a phone call saying and I'm only licensed for 3 children. They did a waiver for this 4th. And so I got a phone call about it, and the 11-year-old was supposed to be in bed, but he overheard, what I was talking about on the phone. He's like, "You're having another kid?" I said, "Yeah." And
congratulations, I'm pregnant. I'm giving birth tomorrow.
Well, and it's so funny because that's exactly where the conversation went. He was like, you're having another kid. I said, "Yeah, most people get 9 months to prepare for that." And you know what he said? "You get 9 minutes." He's so funny. But he's absolutely right.
Yeah, because it's very quick sometimes.
Yeah, so in that case, he probably showed up 3 hours later.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
Yeah, so it keeps you on your toes for sure, being a foster parent, but it's worth it.
What are some lessons, I guess, good things that you didn't know would come from this experience being a foster mom, and then things that you weren't prepared that have been very challenging or hard?
Yeah, the good things are basically what I expected them to be: the children themselves.
Yes.
I mean, they're just wonderful, and I love them to pieces, and that's the positive. I will say that one of the things I had been worried about during training, something that they were covering, was your relationship with the birth families and having that open line of communication as much as possible. And I thought, oh gosh, how am I going to be able to? I have luckily had an excellent relationship with all of the birth families that I've encountered so far. So that was another positive. Negatives have largely been logistical. You just think things that make you want to pull your hair out. Finding the right dentist, finding, you need this paperwork and you need it today. Things like that just make me go, oh. But it all works out in the end. Sibling rivalry, just normal kid things.
Yeah, I have
too.
middle schoolers. I don't.
Yeah.
It's funny. You're like, I love this age. I'm like,
I do. So all 3 children who I have in my care right now are in middle school. I am licensed.
Bless you.
I am licensed for ages 6 to 17, but I mostly end up with middle school age. And as we were discussing earlier, the placement workers have kind of caught on that's my age. So I think that's what I'm going to keep.
I guess I have one more question for you, and then we'll wrap it up. This has been very helpful for me. You've answered a lot of my questions. So hopefully it's been helpful for you. But this is more for me than the viewers. I don't know. But no, a good question is, how do you you can't guard your heart from loving these children.
No way.
So how do you cope with loving this human being and working with them to cope with the traumas that they've endured, help them get to the place where they need to be, and then seeing them leave?
It's not easy. And I'm thinking particularly of the first girl that I had in my home. When she left, I was a wreck for a while. And I just took a few weeks off and said, I'm not ready for another kid right now. I just need to process and grieve. So, just being honest with yourself and with your agency about your emotional needs. And,
are you allowed to stay in contact with a child after they left your home?
I actually am in contact with her, but it's a case-by-case basis thing.
Okay. Does a child say whether or not does a child get to say, yes, I want to be in contact with Kelsey, or no, don't ever let me talk to her ever again?
It depends on the age, because I mostly foster older children. I am able to have more of a possibility for post-placement connection, but it's just going to depend on so many factors. I do want to get back to one other thing you said, though. Sure. I know we have limited time, but you had wanted to talk about policy.
Yes.
And I think, certainly adoption reform and foster care reform are good things to be looking at, but getting back to the idea of what is the root, the pro-life movement should, as much as possible, be putting its emphasis on supporting families so that they can raise their own children. And particularly in the pregnancy context, the vast majority of women in crisis pregnancies would parent if they could.
That's right.
So having that support from the beginning, and if a child is removed and placed into foster care, helping that person to have a reunification is really where our priorities should lie, in my opinion. because you can tweak things at the margins within foster care and adoption, and I'm not saying that's not worth doing, but to have the biggest impact, you have to start at the root.
That's a great point. That's a very good point. Thank you for sharing that. Where can people go? I mean, does everyone just email you if they have questions about becoming?
Sure.
Well, like, other resources, like places that you found helpful online to like go get, where to find your local agencies and where to get information.
So my local agency is Children's Network of Southwest Florida, but I know
so you
that
can probably just Google it, right?
Yeah, you can just Google it, or you can just ask around.
Ask a pro-lifer.
Ask your local pro-lifer. Ask your local guardian ad litem foundation or CASA, court-appointed special advocates. Those are things that you'll also find in most communities, and they are very closely connected to foster care as well. Okay. If you're trying to find a starting point and you're not sure where to go, that could be a starting place as well. So that's my advice.
That's great. Well, thank you for sharing this. I really wanted to have this special episode just with you on this issue because I feel like this is something that so many of us in the pro-life movement have thought about, becoming a foster parent, or we've had lots of in-depth conversations with people about the foster care system as a whole. I think as we prepare for post-Roe America, this obviously is going to come up more. So thank you for sharing this kind of personal side of Kelsey and what you're doing. And thank you for all that you've done with secular pro-life and continue to do. So it's been fun having you.
Pleasure to be here.
All right. Thanks for tuning into this episode of Explicitly Pro-Life. Make sure you subscribe. Make sure you share this episode around, especially with anyone you may know who might be considering becoming a foster parent, or maybe just putting their toes in the water. Thanks, guys.